Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my behind-the-scenes demon live stream, Crafting the Golden Vault, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Keys from the Golden Vault. If you are playing characters Cherie, Elowen, Stacey, or Tavine, or Vero, this stream is not meant for you because it will be full of spoilers, but the rest of you are always welcome. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. You can join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. You can also support the channel by shopping for your tabletop games, CCGs, miniatures, RPG supplies, and more at our sponsor, Noble Knight Games, using my affiliate link. For a campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use OBS Studio. Look it, I have found a map that suits my needs for the thing we talked about on Monday's crafting stream, which was to throw a complication at the party when they try to turn in their money from Schemo. So if you recall, between the Troll Skull Manor adventure and the one that they were on it for so long, I have to think back for like 2 months of like real life time to go back to this, and the Stygian Gambit, they had to revive one of their party members who was killed, Elowen, and they had to owe a bunch of money to Schemo Weirdbottle, who is a gnome from Waterdeep Dragon Heist, kind of a shady, disreputable, I guess, merchant who works with like criminal organizations, which is always a fun kind of character trope idea thing to work with. And they owe him money because they couldn't quite afford to do the full resurrection, which I thought was just a fun opportunity. And in order to, because a promissory note probably doesn't really mean much, he made the party drink basically poison, this powerful, long-lasting poison, and in order to get the antidote for that poison, they would have to pay him the rest of the money. And the party managed to only convince him that only 2 of them needed to drink the poison potion, which was Tavine and Cherie, I believe. And during the very last bit of our heist adventure, I meant to do it earlier, honestly, but just we had a lot of stuff going on. They started feeling the effects of that poison and started suffering from exhaustion levels. So I thought, as a fun little twist, one of the first things they're going to want to do, after they've completed their mission, now obviously they'll go back to Trench. Trench will give them rewards, by the way, because they were able to do the whole heist without killing anybody, which is pretty awesome. So I'm kind of thinking I'll give them the rewards I would have given them maybe after the museum heist. I'll give them this time. I don't really think I need to give them monetary rewards, just because it feels weird that, like, Trench is like, oh, you completed the mission, here's 100 gold, and they literally have like 5,000 gold like worth of stuff. and possibly made a new enemy with Quentin, which we will have to explore that possibility, I think, as well, because Quentin would certainly want to be trying to hunt them down, and now that he's got cleaned out his money, so it's going to be a real problem for the casino. So we can deal with that as well as maybe an interesting. At this point, I'm getting more into like Dragon Heist type, like just urban crime shit going on in the adventure versus like heist missions. But anyway, for the purposes of this one, they're gonna return to Schemo's shop because they have the money. So now they need to turn in the money, and then Schemo will provide the 2 characters with the antidote. So my interesting complication is that the party returns to the shop, but Schemo is currently being roughed up by another criminal gang organization. So I kind of went back and forth on this. I was inspired at first by the Safe House standoff from the new Adventures in Faerun book that dropped. But I kind of talked myself out of it on Monday's stream because I think it would have turned it into more of a Troll Skull Manor, not nearly as long as that one. But my point was really to create just kind of a one-off, one area encounter. And even though the adventure was written like that, it would also require some like investigation of the shop. So basically, my original idea was like they would return to the shop and they would find the shop ransacked, and they would have to figure out what happened, and then that would lead them to the safe house location where Schemo is being kept by this criminal gang. But that would require multiple steps to get there, right? You'd have to investigate the shop, you'd have to make it to the safe house, and then at the safe house, you could almost treat that like a mini heist where it's like, all right, let's fan out, let's explore, go around windows and all this. So I just feel like it would take too much time. And while it's still a cool idea, for the purpose of my campaign, we're already doing heist shit like normally. That's like what we're normally doing. So for me to interrupt our heist based campaign with a mini heist doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I still liked my idea, so I'm kind of pivoting and I'm thinking, okay, well let's keep the Schemo in trouble bit, and instead we'll just have him be in trouble in his store. So the action is here, and it's basically had just happened, and instead of the gangsters taking him somewhere else, they're basically just they kind of did the thing where they walk into the store with all their muscle, kind of ambush him a bit, and then they want to like put him in the back room and like rough him up to try to get answers. Basically, is what I'm kind of thinking, and that's what's happening when the party arrives. So they can immediately be involved in this situation, basically. And they could do a little bit of scouting work and kind of things, but it's basically gonna prompt. My idea is it's just gonna prompt one big combat encounter, because I think that would actually be the interesting pacing interrupting thing, even though we technically came out of a big combat encounter at the end of our heist. That was also at the end of like 6 or 7 sessions of that heist. So, and this will be a case where this is not sanctioned by the Golden Vault. The players are free to murder as much as they want if they choose, although that could also create more complications for them, because I figured, well, again, let's look at Waterdeep Dragon Heist as my springboard for crafting the world around them that doesn't have anything to do with their heists. And I thought, okay, if Schemo works with the Zentarum, and I specifically don't want to use my Zentarum rivals, then maybe I just don't want to use the Zentarum at all. And instead, I want to highlight the fact that Schemo works with other criminal gang organizations. So I thought, okay, how about the Xanathar's Thieves Guild, which is another big criminal organization based in Waterdeep. So that's what I've centered on here, and I kind of looked up like what kind of enemies would, or what kind of I guess units, like recruits or whatever, that the Xanathar would have, which tend to be more non-human in nature, but which I could still play with that. So the interesting thing about how, the stat blocks work is I could still have like a bugbear with the spy stat block, for example, and that could also help kind of metagaming thing, I guess, where although maybe not too much with my group, but like with people seeing that as a token and being like, oh, okay, I know what that is, but then it's actually like the spy stat block or something. So I could still play with that. I haven't done too much of that in this setup right now, but I have found a map that gives me a nice kind of medium-sized shop, which is what I was looking for, and allows it so the party does have to make it through the shop in order to make it to the boss room, basically, where Schemo is being held. And also, which I discussed this a little bit in our Discord channel in the No Players Allowed section, Schemo, by default in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, is the full mage stat block, which I was tying myself into knots trying to figure out how somebody like that could be captured by a bunch of just street criminals, basically, without them having very specific measures. And finally I decided, let's just make this easier on me and just reduce his stat block. So that takes care of that problem. So I'm basically reducing him to the Mage Apprentice stat block. So he doesn't have his big old, fireballs and counter spells and all his crazy shit, Misty Steps and everything that would allow him to basically escape any of these situations fairly easily, fly. Like, it would just be kind of too crazy. If the players, if I was setting up a situation where the players had to capture him, then I think it's interesting for him to have a really powerful stat block like that, and that's kind of how he's built in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where one of the missions has the players trying to capture him, and of course he can use all of his mini spell tools and whatever to escape. But in this case, I need him to be captured by other people that the party can battle. So I think reducing his stat block to a Mage Apprentice is just going to be way easier for those purposes. So this map, by the way, is from Tom Kartos, who is a great cartographer that I just don't end up using a whole lot of his map art for whatever reason. But this particular one is from on Roll20. I think on Drive-Thru RPG it's called something slightly different. It's like Traders and Shops or something. But in Roll20 it's under Into the Wilds Volume 3, Traders and Dwellings. So just kind of bundled together with a whole bunch of different buildings that work as a add-on that you literally add on to your game. So unfortunately you can't get these piecemeal. I can't just get the one map and kind of load that in. I have to get like all whatever 20 or 30 of these, and then that comes in as a folder that I can then use one of these. But it's called Into the Wilds Volume 3, Traders and Dwellings on Roll20. And like I said, it appears as this giant, oh my gosh, 58 maps is what it comes with. And this is the Apothecary map, which is what I was searching for, was specifically Apothecary. And it looks great. I think it's amazing. And it comes with all the dynamic art already in place, even the more modern windows and doors, which is fantastic. And it fit my size recommendations. The art style is perfect. I was like, yes, it looks like it's part of like a town or city. So fucking brilliant. I absolutely love it. By the way, hello, Jason. Hope you're doing well. Sylvan and Morgan, good to see all of you in the chat. So the idea being the party is, and what's funny is they don't expect this to be a thing, right? There's a funny deal where the party expects this to just be a hand wave. I would expect just a hand wave like thing we do on the main like city map. They're like, oh yeah, we need to go to Schemos and turn our money in and get our potion. I mean, they may think it's like a brief role play scene or something. Whereas I will be like, all right, well you show up at the store, but right outside you see a pair of rough-looking folks who tell you, hey, the store's closed, move along. And the party's gonna be like, what? And that's kind of what's gonna start the ball rolling here, where they'll immediately realize that something isn't right. They can look through the windows. I guess I'm debating also on when to show them this map. That's actually a really good question. And I've talked about this before over the years, where playing on a virtual tabletop especially, you really need to know when to transition the party to a battle map, because that, I think, gives them a different frame of what's happening here. So if you wait as long as possible to show the map, they may think this is, this could be solved through other means, and this is, an RP moment or something happening, basically, if I keep them on the Waterdeep City map. Versus if I switch to this map while we're doing that, then they may be thinking, oh, we're in like a scenario situation. Like this is an encounter. So I'll have to play around with that. And I probably don't have a good answer to it until we're actually going live and can kind of read the room and figure out like when I want to transition over to this actual battle map. But I do want to make sure to give them some time to be able to kind of explore this space, because there are like windows they can look through. Which is awesome. I mean, dynamic lighting is on. It's obviously daylight when they go. But I've crafted it to where you can see... Actually, you know what? Let me close that door. There we go. You can see into the main room and through the windows, and they'll be able to see a bunch of kind of rough-looking people inside. I think what I'll probably do is say, like, make a perception check. Like, you can see people in there, obviously, but make a perception check. And then you can identify the fact that they all look kind of gangstery, basically. They're all, or maybe like adventurers. They're all pretty well, heavily armed and kind of, looking over stuff. And maybe the shop looks a little bit roughed over or something. And there looks like there's people like kind of standing outside of a door, like basically standing guard in a weird way. So the player should know something's off. And then whether they start a fight or use charisma or something to back these guys off, these guys will either open the door or yell or something. And the idea is basically the party is kind of supposed to get into one big combat fight here, I think. I think they would have to play things very carefully and cleverly to not be in a big fight, but that's kind of what I'm picturing. And I'm throwing a big fight at them because I'm also thinking that they will probably go back and long rest at trenches first, even though they are feeling the effects of this. Two of them are feeling the effects of this debilitating poison they've got. They're very weak. It's been forever. Like they just kind of need to go back to long. So I will probably encourage them to long rest and level up first, which is why I'm a lot more comfortable throwing this really big battle at them. Plus, this is a situation which doesn't come up very often in my campaigns, and I'm proud of that, where the party is basically going to get one encounter for their long rest. Because after they long rest from, again, the whole Stygian Gambit thing, then they'll do this encounter, and then we don't really have anything else planned. We can just, long rest again. We might do the introduction to Tockworth's Clockworks, but there's nothing that's going to prevent the party necessarily from just... Actually, what I'll probably do is have a time passage section where they can do their bastion turns, so like many days pass, for example, before we actually start Tockworth's Clockworks, because it's also something I don't introduce in my campaigns very often, which is downtime, which is why we're using the bastion thing. So this will be a situation where the party will be able to just unleash all their shit on a single long rest. So again, and it's level 5, so they'll be able to show all that off. So kind of a bigger combat encounter for them, I think, at level 5. I haven't actually crunched the numbers on this, but what I've got here is 3 tough stat blocks, 3 spies, 2 bugbear warriors, 2 gazers, which is actually from Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which are these cute little, like, familiar-sized beholders that don't really have a whole lot of hit points, but have very, like, miniature versions of the kind of spectator eye rays, which I think is cool, and something that would really give them the flavoring of being from the Xanathar's Thieves Guild as well. People can make, like... Actually, I don't know what the right check for that is, for like history, I guess, or something, like street smarts in terms of like knowing where this gang is from. And then the boss, who I'm using the token for a bugbear stalker, but I believe the stat block I'm using, is actually the tough boss. So not as tough as the safe house standoff encounter, by the way, which had like 5 toughs, 5 spies, and a bandit deceiver, which was like a CR7. Unless you all think I need to go harder on the boss, but I'm keeping things pretty simple here. And a tough boss is a CR4, so that still seems pretty tough. And all of these are pretty easy stat blocks. Like, there's no real spellcasters here, which may be kind of a weakness, unless you count the gazers, I guess, could be. The spies, they've got extra poison, and all 2024 stuff, by the way, except for the gazers, which, again, doesn't exist in that book. The spies, instead of doing extra sneak attack stuff, they do have the cunning action, like... kind of similar to goblins, I guess. They just deal straight up extra poison damage with every hit, but they only have 1 attack around, but they do extra 2d6 poison damage. The toughs just are kind of the meaty tanks. We saw them a little bit in the Stygian Gambit. They're honestly pretty weak. They do have pack tactics, but everybody just has the single attack, which, again, the party should have multi-attack now when they get to level 5. I guess only 2 of them get multi-attack, though. Now that I think about it, the monk and the fighter, because the rest are a druid, a rogue, and a mage. But the wizard and the druid will both have access to 3rd level spells, so that's pretty big. And then the bugbear warrior stat block, which all of these are about CR1, I think. So they're actually, they do still have their +6 of stealth, but what's interesting is the 2024 bugbears, I think it's the bugbear no longer has that like super damage stealth buff that they had before. Instead, they're like flavored around grappling, which is interesting, but I don't know how much that's going to come into play here. Like their basic attack grabs people. In fact, it's called grab. For some reason, their grab does 2d6 plus 2 bludgeoning damage, making barbarians jealous left and right that they do a shit ton of damage with their grab. And then they grapple people, and then they don't have to spend extra movement to grapple creatures. So that makes them really good at grabbing people and running around. I don't know, like in an environment where there's nothing to do with that, unless I guess you could grab people and move them somewhere else, and you could have a little bit of fun with that. But yeah, it's kind of, I haven't looked at that stat block, I guess, much in 2024, but that's how that works. And the tough boss does have a ton of hit points, by the way, an average of around 80 or 90 hit points. He does have multi-attack, the only guy in here with multi-attack, and is armed with a heavy crossbow and a warhammer, which actually has the weapon mastery feature of the warhammer and knocks people away. Which, again, I don't know how useful that is for creatures to have in an area where there's not any hazards or anything, but yeah, so that's kind of the fun little scenario. And I really wanted to craft something that we could do in a session, damn it, because as much as I loved Troll Skull Manor, I recognize that that ended up taking us a lot longer than anticipated. Staging Gambit obviously took us a lot longer than anticipated. We only get together for like, 2 hours a session, so I'm very aware of pacing stuff. And that's why I wanted to kind of trim out the part where it's like, oh, we have to investigate this ransacked store and figure out where he is, and then go do, like, I really wanted to put things more in the immediate action of this scenario, which is the party quickly realizing something is wrong here, and then triggering a battle probably sooner rather than later, because these guys will definitely fight back. Now, this is a gang of criminals, not like monsters or anything, so they would also value their own lives. They would not necessarily fight to the death. And in fact, the whole gang could be routed, I would presume, if like half of them are defeated, or especially if the leader is defeated, they would try to get the hell out of here. So that may make things a little bit easier for the party, because these guys wouldn't fight all the way down to their lowest hit points. But the party also has to still, like, make it that far, I guess. And again, these enemies don't have any spells at their disposal, which I could change. I could make... In fact, it might be worth putting, like, just a single goblin hexer in the group or something. Although maybe if I need to start deleting people if I want to add more. And yeah, I did put a third bugbear warrior, but then had them dead on the floor, so that maybe it looks like Schemo at least killed somebody before he was captured, and he is currently being like roughed up and punched and like tied to a table or something, and the leader, who I named Rufus, is just currently trying to get answers out of him, and maybe they're trying to figure out who this gang of characters is. I'm thinking, like, hey, we know you work with the Zentarum, but what is this other gang we heard you about who's going around doing all these jobs? So that kind of it kind of reflects that the party's actions have wider consequences around the city, I think, which is always fun to reflect in a campaign. I agree, Sylvan. It is okay to let players curb stomp encounters. I will say that, like, for a dungeon crawl, I think it's good. Like, for an average adventuring day, I would agree, and I think you need to have a mix of encounters. Some, they can't all be really tough boss fights. You should have some that are particularly easy, so like the spellcasters feel like they don't have to spend very many spell slots, if any. Some that are more medium, where it's like, oh, I should probably spend a spell slot or two here. And then you've got like the boss fight where you're like, okay, I need to basically not hold back and do whatever I need to win this battle. So I do think that's important. But when we have one encounter per day, I feel like that balancing kind of goes out the window, and it's just like, I guess that allows the party to also curb stomp because they can unleash everything, although they might not still feel like they need to do that. But it basically gives me, the DM, the freedom to not have to carefully watch their pacing and be like, okay, I need to make sure this is like an easy or medium encounter. Instead, this is probably a medium to maybe even a hard encounter. But I think the party will still do very well if they realize they can use all their stuff. But they may not want to, because that's another interesting thing about especially veteran D&D players, is they're like, well, we just long rested. I don't want to spend all my shit right now. I need to pace myself. So it may not, even if they know, like, we're gonna long rest after this, they may still just have that mentality of like, oh, I need to pace my abilities and all my things. So that could factor into it too, and I don't have a whole lot of control over that. It's just however the players want to treat the situation, basically. Otherwise, I don't have a whole lot of notes or anything for the situation. Like I said, they can make perception checks or insight checks or whatever to try to figure out things are wrong. Once they make it in and start battling, and Schemo or Rufus would be aware, Schemo would probably start yelling. And then Rufus would probably join the fight within a round or two, probably 2 rounds. Just to help also, that would pace things out so they're not literally aggroing everybody all at once. Unless the party does a thing where they're, split up and entering multiple rooms. None of the doors are locked. They're just being guarded by guys because those guys are trying to keep the party, or keep basically any other customers out of here. And I did have to... So this might be a new feature from Roll20. Roll20 in the Windows now has an option for curtains, which actually has a cute little graphic. And that literally blocks line of sight. So it functionally works the same as a door. It's just that if there's no curtains there, it allows people to look through. So if you select curtains, then it blocks line of sight, and then I also locked it. So that's, to me, saying that the windows are normally locked, I think, anyway. In fact, yeah, I should probably lock all these windows when I think about it. Let's go ahead and lock these up. So they still provide a line of sight where the players can look through. But here, I assume that the bad guys had at least the foresight to draw the curtains within this inner room. And maybe it's normally drawn anyway, because it's kind of his bedroom area. Just to, again, block light line of sight, so they can't quite see that, like, the dead body's here and, like, shit's, like, really gone down in this center room. Which I really do love this map. Again, this is from Tom Cardos's. On Roll20, it's called Into the Wilds, Volume 3, Traders and Dwellings. I think it's called slightly something else if you want to look for it on Drive-Thru RPG. I forget the name, but it's like Traders and Shops or something. But it's definitely a Tom Cardos map, which is awesome. What if the players help the Xanathars? Ooh. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good question. Players are like, yeah, let us beat up Schemo too. My first idea is for the Xanathars to be complete and utter dickholes and be very rude and very gangstery and really putting off to the players to kind of invite them for conflict. And I think the Xanathars would be very suspicious of them. So basically, I will do everything in my power to not let that happen. Xanathars are already suspicious of the people Schemo been working for. And in fact, if the party lingers too long in this RP scene, they may talk with each other and be like, we got a problem out here, and go ahead and like start combat, basically. So yeah, I think I will do everything in my power to unmotivate the party to work with the Xanathars here. But that is an interesting thought process. They need Schemo. They need him alive. So that's certainly a motivation for them. Also, one thing I need to think about is if there is a reward for the party rescuing Schemo. Initially, I had a pretty big reward in mind, but then folks have kind of reminded me that he is Schemo. And perhaps doesn't give that big of a reward for saving him. I mean, he's still owed a lot of money, and in fact, with these guys coming in to like trash his shop, presumably, and kind of rough him over, then maybe he needs the money as much as he can. So maybe, he was Brythagoras, shout out to Brythagoras on our Discord server, who says he should take more than 10% off of what they owe him. So I think, unless somebody can look it up, because I don't quite remember, and for some reason I didn't write it down like an idiot, but I think they owed 1,500 gold pieces after everything else. Like they got the down payment, Trench gave him some money, Schemo even shaved some money off because they were friends of Trench, and like after all that is said and done, because it cost like several thousand, I think, or maybe it was like 2,000, 2,500, something like that, to do the full the raised dead or whatever. So I'm thinking it was 1,500. For some reason I have that in my head. So if he shaves off 10%, that's 150 gold off. So that would be 1,350. And then I think, well, maybe with a persuasion check, then he can shave off 20%, which would be 300 gold, leaving them with 1,200 GP to pay. When I know my players are going to throw a fucking stink about this. They're like, you should do it pro bono. We just saved your life. And he's going to be like, he's Schemo. He's going to be like, fuck you. Like, this happens. You think this is the first time I've been roughed up? Like, I need my money now more than ever. But maybe I can hire you all as, I don't know, something. I don't have anything planned at the moment. It just kind of depends on what the vibes are with the players. And I know I have fun like role-playing Schemo and everything. I know I don't plan on having the players be in Waterdeep for their whole career. In fact, their next mission is actually going to take them away from Waterdeep. But maybe we can have Schemo pop up for other things. But Yeah, I think just offering a bit of a discount could help them in this situation, but not a huge one. Also, they're fucking flush with money. Cry me a river. Like they got thousands of gold. They can afford it. Damn it. I don't remember if the Bastion cost them money either. I remember I kind of waived their money because the Bastion mission I had set up was ended up being so taxing and long for them and arduous that I kind of hand waved anyway. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to cost them. Like, is it in the Dungeon Master's Guide? I think it is. I think the Bastion's kind of a like level reward. I don't think it actually costs money, or is it something you're supposed to is it something you're supposed to pay for after a while? I don't remember. Where is the Bastion chapter? Chapter 8, the very end. I think you can spend... It's a weird thing where it's like you can spend money, but I don't know if it actually gets you anything. Yeah, you can add basic facilities. You can add a cramped facility for 500 gold or a roomy facility for 1,000 gold. It's a big money sink. Time sink. I guess it is time sink because it takes money to do it. Or enlarge facility. But like none of that has... Yeah, I'm always trying to think of it like a fucking video game RPG where it's like, okay, but what is the actual like mechanical benefit of this thing? Right? Like, yeah, we like big rooms, but what does that do for me in terms of my stats or my abilities? That's how I'm always thinking. And I kind of presume that's how my players are thinking of it too, because we're not big into the RP scene as much as the game part of it, I guess. So you can spend money, but I don't think it's necessary to spend money on the Bastion. But maybe I can come up with... In fact, I talked about how I want to use their... give them a pub, which is a level 13 facility. But I didn't want to give them the full benefits of the pub because it's a level 13 facility. But because that's how Trollskull Manor had their main thing, was the whole downstairs was like a tavern. So maybe I can say, hey, if you want to drop like 1,000 gold pieces or something... then we can expand this pub and you can turn that into the full pub abilities. I don't know how unbalancing that is because, again, it's a level 13 place. You can basically drink one magical beverage. I guess I could look it up on Roll20 since I'm looking at the book here. Let's see. Can I just look up pub? Will that come up with it? Yes, it will. Excellent. Bastion facility. Have Schemo get angry for saving him. That's... I could play around with that a little bit as well. I don't want to be like... Yeah, I got to play Schemo very carefully. He needs to be kind of like a lovable asshole, which is a tricky line to walk. Because he should be an asshole, but like in a weirdly fun and endearing way. Versus the Xanathar folks should just be assholes in a nasty gang way. So yeah, I was going to give them the pub as it's like all the non-magical benefits. I guess they could have information gathering as well, but that doesn't really have anything to do with our campaign necessarily. But you can have one magical beverage on tap, choose from the options below, and they give you like magical benefits. And each Bastion turn you can switch. So it's not like anybody can choose. I think you have to choose one beverage, and then I think everybody could drink of that one for 24 hours after it's poured. So I guess that's actually hugely limiting. If you have to travel after you drink it, then you're not really going to get the benefits. You can enlarge your pub to a vast facility by spending 2,000 gold. If you do, the pub can have 2 magical beverages from the pub specialist on tap at a time. Interesting. So what I could do is have that and say, hey, it costs 1,000 to get the one. Because again, this is a level 13. They're not supposed to get this to level 13. The benefits are drinking a pint grants you the enlarge effect for 24 hours, which is pretty awesome. I was going to say pretty big. It is big. Kiss the Spider Queen gives you the Spider Climb spell for 24 hours. Moonlight Serenade gives you dark vision for 24 hours. Positive Reinforcement gives you resistance to necrotic damage. And Sterner Stuff. Thought you were made of sterner stuff. Automatically succeed on saves to avoid or end the frightened condition. So pretty good, but the 24 hours thing is definitely a big part of it, especially with our next. I guess I could argue that our next adventure, it takes less than a day. I mean, if they really wanted to do this and have it be unlocked for the next adventure, maybe I could say it takes less than a day of traveling through the Underdark. Unfortunately, Tockworth doesn't, I think, quite say how far it is, how far away it is. So, do you think that would be too unbalancing, I guess, to allow them this facility so early? The weird thing is, like, you only get one, and then, but everybody could drink of it. So, like, everybody is suddenly big for 24 hours. Like, that's kind of comical. Everybody has spider climb. I imagine everybody having dark vision would be great for the Underdark. Although they don't know that the town is actually decently lit. Let's see, who's got dark vision? I think the Aasimar does, the Orc does, and the Elf does. I don't remember if the Gnome does or not. Sherry actually might be one of the few without dark vision here. It might be a little unbalancing, but I think it'd be a fun use of, again, using some of that money and putting it back. Because my concern is that I just don't think they give a shit about, like, oh, well, I can get a better room or something. Great. Versus, like, oh, I can get this cool magical beverage that we can drink. That's pretty cool. So I don't think does it cost any money to craft anything? I think it does. Yeah, it does look like, okay. So you can spend, so it looks like the way you spend money is by upgrading all the facilities, not for getting the facilities themselves, but you can spend a big sum of money to upgrade your existing facilities. Not all of them, but some of them, it looks like. And they do have a shit ton of money. Yeah. The Xanathars will come back even harder. Yeah. This happens every month. They come rough me up to get their money, then leave me alone for a month. Now they think I'm standing up to them. You just got me killed. That's actually pretty cool. I like it, Sylvan. That feels very gangstery, and really plays into the whole, like, underworld theme that we're kind of teasing with here. Is like he'll be upset. He's like, look, this is just part of the business, you idiots. So then maybe he needs to be less like, help me. And more of just the boss getting aggroed when they finally find him. Yeah, maybe he owes it. You know what? Maybe he owes them some potions and reagents and ingredients, and he spent some of that to resurrect Elowin. And now these guys are pissed that he doesn't have those things available. And that also directly involves the players in this. And he is just saying, yeah, I spent those on some other folks, and Rufus will be like, just beating the shit out of him, trying to figure out, like, if he's got more, if he's got money or something else. So I guess one thing, the party could bribe the Xanathars, now that I think about it, right? And their pockets are full. So it could be that I still want to try to have a little bit of a dust up in a fight here if I can. But it could very well be that the party is like, look, let me give you your money, and you leave Schemo alone, you go about your business. And then he'll probably huff and chuff, but accept that. I wonder how much, probably, like, I need to make it high enough for the party to bulk. Maybe like 1,000 gold. Because the gangster world, so shit's a lot. But maybe if the party's beaten some of them up or something, I could give them a charisma check to kind of lower that amount. I could work with that. So I should probably make a note that they could possibly pay him. That would definitely take a charisma check. So let's see. Schemo owes the Xanathar Guild. About 1,000 GP worth of reagents and ingredients, which he spent on raising Elowen. And because the party hasn't given him his money yet, he didn't have the money to re-get those things. He wasn't necessarily expecting them to come this soon either. So, party could give Rufus the 1,000 GP to send him on his way. Although as gangsters, these guys would probably want to also just rob the shit out of these adventurers and take all their shit if they could. Like, he'd be like, you got that money, you probably got more on you. So it depends on how the fight's going, right? Like, if they're trying to end the fight because both sides have suffered, then that would be different versus, like, we're just starting out. Then I think the gangsters would definitely have some swagger about them. So that depending on how the fight's going, charisma check would probably be required. The enemy has suffered losses. If Rufus's force, Rufus's gang has suffered losses, then the check could be made with advantage. Possibly even give a lowered amount, no less than 750 gold pieces. Rufus is reduced to half HP or lost half his crew, then they'll flee. And the party will have made some enemies. Made some more enemies. Maybe Quentin will try to get involved with the Xanathar's Guild then. And we can really have the party get hunted down at some point, which would be pretty fun. I don't know if I can integrate that into any of our current heist missions. The one that would be most applicable for these kind of shenanigans would be Masterpiece and Broglio, which I was planning on having that be a Zentarum hideout where we can have our Zentarum crew be there. Basically, they have to steal from a thieves guild. But could always pivot into something else. Veteran's Vault is another one we could use. That's also just like security, I don't know, not a safe house thing, but like literally just like a storage area, I guess. I wasn't planning on using that one necessarily, but I'm just trying to think of situations where if the party likes these kind of things versus the heist missions, we can do more of that. But these aren't necessarily, part of the main campaign. This is just stuff that's kind of grown out of, I guess, story ideas that I had to try to flesh everything out. Before we start on our next campaign, which again is going to be Tockworth Clockworks, and they'll get the mission. So we probably, I don't see us doing any of that tomorrow for our next session. I see this being we'll level up to 5. We'll go back to Trench. Trench will be very pleased with how everything went down. The 2 tieflings will be very pleased with it. Maybe the party will even be nice and give them some money. I don't know. I could have Trench reward them with money, but it does feel silly with them having such a big payday. But what he will do, I think, is have a bunch of custom tailored magic items for them, kind of one for each person, because it's been a fairly low magic campaign. I have given them some stuff, and they did get a little bit of loot from the Stygian Gambit, although not much. I mean, the Murkmire, they got, what did they get? Basically, the Bag of Holding, a Dagger of Venom, a Mask of the Beast, and a +1 spear, although those last two items, I'm not sure anybody's using them. They also got a unique familiar creature, which has not been used as far as I'm aware. And for from the Stygian Gambit, the only things they got really was a Wand of Magic Detection and a +1 Great Axe that has kind of a Gem of Brightness feature on it. So pretty low magic stuff so far. I don't even think any of these are attunement that I can see. Yeah, so not that much involved here. So I'm planning on giving them some, although the ones I'm planning on giving them, honestly, are going to be more like uncommon style items that are also not attuned. So it's kind of crazy to me that we'll have made it to level 5 without even a single attuned item among anybody in the party, as far as I'm aware. I'm trying to think if any of their like starting items had it, but I don't think they would. That's a very, very rare for our campaign. I did give them the Sending Stone earrings though, which they do have some stuff. They do have some stuff. But so I was planning on giving them basically some uncommon level magic items. And then I haven't honestly looked at Tockworth's treasures to see if there's anything interesting that they can grab there. I may have to craft some stuff. And I know you all know that I feel that I make too many magic items in general. But I still think even when looking at the like, here's how many items you should give people chart from wherever table that is, I still think we're kind of flying underneath that here. As again, we'll be making level 5 next time. Not much available, and they won't really get anything from Schemo here. I guess one thing he could do as a reward, because he's a fucking apothecary, is he could say, all right, I'll throw in a few free potions for you. Because that's something the party also doesn't have, and they would very much appreciate. So I could say, all right, everybody gets, I'll give you 4 or 5 potions of healing, and then maybe like a potion of climbing or something. I don't know, like not like crazy, but still a pretty good payout from this. I like rewarding my players. So he works at a potion shop. That feels like a more interesting reward. I can also reward them with some potions. And I expect this to take the full session between leveling up, returning to trench, and then doing this scenario. I think that'll take us the full session. And then I think, and then also if we have more time, we can even do our Bastion turn, and the players can talk about the different things they want to craft or whatever else they want to do, or if they want to pump some money into their Bastion, they can do that as well. And then finally, I think next week, awkwardly, even though we're fixing to go on a big holiday break, we'll kick off Tockworth's Clockworks with having the Deep Gnome Nyx arrive at Trenches and with the Golden Key and explain through her very broken common, although we've determined for some weird reason 3 of the 5 party members I have can speak Undercommon, so they can actually fully converse with Nyx, which is not something I initially had prepared. I was initially going to be very curt and like one word answers heavily accented, but with them being able to switch to Undercommon pretty easily, we could just have a normal conversation, I guess. And she'd be able to explain how their town was lost and they need to get back there, and that you all, should be able to help. And Trench will be like, all right, well, as with a Golden Key, this is officially sanctioned mission that you all will be rewarded for. I don't know the details of this. We're still not in the killing business, but if you are indeed up against Clockwork soldiers, then that doesn't really count. So feel free to murder a bunch of automatons if you need to. If Nyx would even say that much of it. She would know the situation, but she wouldn't feel comfortable telling everybody about it before they meet the mayor, which could definitely be part of the annoyance of the players being like, well, wait, we're going all the way down to the Underdark. We don't even know what the fucking quest is. So she'll try and we'll kind of play that back and forth and see how much I want to divulge to the party before they actually head down there. I have not yet decided what our Underdark encounter is going to be. It does give us some options. Need to minimize some of these. All right, Tockworths, into the Underdark. It only really has Grells and Hook Horrors and a Black Pudding, I guess, for battle options. There is a Mimic. I don't know if I actually want to use one, even though it's used in this map for some reason. There's a throne carved like a stalagmite that's actually a Mimic. I don't know why. Tiny clockwork device, which is something they can find, apparently, left by a miner. That seems like something I could reward for them in the actual adventure. I'm sure there's fun little things like that they can work with. I'm sure Shuri would love something like that, like a little clockwork thing he can use. A Gallop Door, which is not supposed to be a fight, I believe. It's just a social encounter with a rock dude. Which is cute, but they've already got a NPC to talk to. So yeah, we can either look at Grells or Hook Horrors or Black Pudding. Because Nyx would be able to lead them back to her people, but the Underdark is not a safe place. The luck for a situation in the Underdark with the tunnels leading to the settlement are well-traveled and relatively easy to navigate. So we'll just say, like, maybe it's actually a town that commonly trades with Waterdeep. So it's actually got a pretty, well-traveled and easy-to-navigate road. I don't know exactly how you get there from the Underdark, from Waterdeep, but I don't plan on making that a very complicated thing. But I do have this one map, and I do think it's worth at least dropping one Underdark encounter at the party to soften them up before just a traditional random encounter fight, basically, before we get to the proper town and even get the proper quest mission, which we've got the option of 3 Hook Horrors, which it looks like they actually hear before they come, so that's not a surprise, versus the Grells, which drop on the characters from above, which does sound like it would be a surprise. We could combine both of them, as I am often in want of doing. Which we could have them... We could have Nyx in the party hearing the Hook Horrors and then trying to hide from them. And then possibly having a Black Pudding or Grell then attack them while they're trying to hide from the Hook Horrors because they stumble into a little cave or something where that creature is. This map doesn't actually have a dead-end cave, though. All the tunnels lead to either an open pit or lava or that awkward throne. So we could do something with that. That might be a fun idea and really add to like the horror aspect. I mean, they could always fight Hook Horrors, I guess, but there's, what they say was 3 of them? These are CR3 each with 75 hit points. My goodness. So meaty. Yeah, that doesn't seem like the most fun fight. So maybe they'll be running or hiding from the Hook Horrors, and I can use either the Grell or the Black Pudding, which I think is a more interesting creature. The Black Pudding is a huge pain in the ass that dissolves mundane weapons and armor, which all of my party has, I believe. They're the acid blobs. They also split, which has been given a huge upgrade compared to the 2014 rules, where now they no longer have to be only subject to lightning or slashing damage. Instead, if it becomes bloodied, it splits, which means every single Black Pudding will split at least once, because at one time it will reach half hit points or fewer. I guess, unless you manage to get it to right above half hit points and then deal all the rest of that HP in one move, then it wouldn't split. But it's got enough hit points where I don't see that being possible most of the time. They deal damage back to anybody hitting them. They're really bad. Acid damage, and then they automatically give a -1 penalty to attack rolls to non-magical weapons and stuff, which, ironically, the fighter wielding a magic weapon and the monk using his fists are probably the best things to attack a Black Pudding. I know. There was at least one other creature I saw recently that used bloodied. or maybe it was one of the, I think it was one of the subclasses actually, because I just covered Heroes of Faerun, and I believe there was something that triggered off the player doing something. Whatever. Oh, I know it was. It was the new rogue, the Sign of the Three, from Heroes of Faerun. Whenever a creature would become bloodied, the rogue could use like a reaction to teleport to them and stab them. As kind of like an assassinate ability, which yeah, it was cool to see something that used the bloodied feature, and it felt very thematic to that player character subclass, because you want to murder people, so you see like a bunch of blood and you get like frenzied or something, which is neat. But yeah, good use of bloodied here. But black puddings are a big pain in the ass. It's a CR4 kind of mini boss fight. Even against just one would be nasty pants, but we could use it to soften up the party. So every time you hit it, you get a -1 on your attacks. Every time the enemy hits you, it does a -1 to your AC. You can cure it with the mending spell, which is a huge use of the mending spell. But I think the wizard is the only one that would have it. I don't know if he has it. So that does, I mean, so it basically just sucks for the fight, but then afterwards, as long as you have mending, you can pick it up. I guess I could argue that maybe somebody in the Deep Gnome Town is mending, and they could also fix it up for him. Or we could use the Grell, which it actually recommends using 2 Grells. And this is by the way the 5th level adventure from Keys to the Golden Vault. So for the first time this whole campaign, we are syncing up with my player levels and the content I'm using, so I can actually hopefully use everything as written and not have to change too much of the balance of the enemies and the DCs and all of that. Although I'm certainly looking at already adding another kind of clockwork stat block to add to the variety, at least. Hopefully not necessarily up the difficulty too much, but just add to the variety of the clockwork creatures they encounter periodically throughout the town. The Grell is definitely an ambush predator with a stealth of 6, 55 hit points, AC of 12. They have multi-attack where they can use their beak and their paralyzing tentacles. So really fun ambush floating jellyfish creature that can attack somebody. They do get to make a save as part of, so the attack has to hit and they have to fail the save in order to get the poisoned and paralyzed condition. But if you're ambushing somebody, that's the best chance to do it. But they still get to do the regular attack on top of that, which is also nice. So both creatures are pretty nasty and I think would be worth doing. And I see either doing, yeah, either the 1 black pudding or the 2 Grell probably. Because the nice thing about the black pudding is it does deal damage. It does damage even if people are just attacking it. So that really helps its kind of action economy. Although the Grell has multi-attack. If we use 2 of them, that's full attacks for me, which is always nice. So we'll figure that out, but I definitely want to use at least 1 creature. And then Nyx is supposed to be the Deep Gnome stat block, which I don't think exists in 2024 rules, which is annoying. But if we want to use the ones from wherever this is from, I forget. The Deep Gnome is only an hit points of 16, which is really low. But actually has some innate spellcasting. Blindness, Deafness, Blur, and Disguise Self. Ooh, that's interesting. She could be disguised as a non-Deep Gnome. I wonder if I want to take advantage of that at all, if that's worth it. It's only once per day, so it'd have to be like, can she travel? Well, I guess you could just turn it on at the start of each day. Or can you? Actually, Disguise Self probably only lasts for like an hour. So she would probably turn it on when she reached the surface, maybe. And then she's got War Pick and Poison Dart. So I could use her as a legit stat block, actually. It's not a bad idea. Or I just use something like the Scout or something. As I guess that's what they want you to do. You kind of lose a little bit of the flavoring with these like I don't know if this Dwerger exists in the monster manual. I'm trying to figure out, because you lose a lot of these kind of stat blocks. Maybe you're just supposed to use like kind of the generic ones and just kind of make them a Dwerger, which I feel like, I don't know, the Dwerger stat block was one of my favorites because they could invisible themselves and enlarge themselves. Just a really fun suite of tools for such a, what would otherwise be a fairly mundane creature. but I don't know if there's anything equivalent to that in the 2024, unfortunately. And we're just, if it's supposed to just use like, oh, like the Scout or something, but like those don't have the cool features that something like the Dwarger did. And same with like a Deep Gnome. So I could use something like a Scout or a Spy or something equivalent, but it's less flavorful and less interesting. So that is I guess a criticism I have of the new 2024 book. Is Drow a stat block? I don't think it is. Wow. They still have Drider, obviously, but yeah, I guess we lost a lot of those. Hmm. Oh well. I think that's gonna do it for this. As I do suddenly a post mortem on the monster manual, as now I'm missing some of my creatures I was using. I think that will do it for this Crafting the Golden Vault. If you enjoy the content, as always, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Brandon, Genocide, Roleplay, Roll, Christopher, Big Nut, John, Nathan, Andrew, Stephanie, Jason, Lee's Buds, Wardy, Mill, C, Tom, the Dogs, Marcus, Hugo, Sasha, John, Zello, Jesus, John, Jello, Sky, Zim, Jesse, Dante, how about them, Nick, Sharny, Chris, and Robert, and Gold patrons, RBG, Bibbergraphs, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Does Lounge, Jerome, Nathan, Scott, Revis, Jerry, Glenn, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support. I will see you all tomorrow for what are we playing? D&D. That's what we do, and we like it.